So I've always sort of felt like Thomas gets a bad rap, right? I mean, we hear that story every year on the second Sunday of Easter. So I have to say, I have had many years to nurse my discontent over the misbranding of Thomas for this supposed failure of his to jump on the resurrection bandwagon without getting what all the other disciples got, getting to see the risen Jesus in person. Doesn't seem fair, right? Mm-hmm. Some of you agree with me, right? You've had that perspective. Right. Yeah. And you know what I think? I think the teenage me especially sympathize with Thomas's need to question. That's because that's how I found deep, true adult faith, was through questioning everything, let me tell you. I have to say, I doubt that I'm alone in this. I'm sure there's other questioners out there. I have to say, the Episcopal Church, it tends to be the home of the questioners, right? So I've always thought there's got to be more to Thomas's story. There's got to be more than just this one little 8 days that he's stuck being remembered for forever, when he's kind of at what is like his low point of faith, right? He's never really lived that down, at least not in the case of the Christian tradition. Now, if you've been around the church as many years as I have, which I know many of us have, you've probably heard as many takes on doubting Thomas as I have. But I'll never forget the moment when I finally heard one that fully resonated with this sense that I have that he's just misunderstood. It was the moment when I got to hear the full story than just that 8 notorious days. And it was totally by accident, and not in church on the second Sunday of Easter, funny enough. Instead, it happened in a youth group classroom. And it was a youth group classroom that I wasn't supposed to be in. I ended up as the last-minute substitute for this day, and they were scheduled to watch this video about doubting Thomas. I had not seen the video before, so it caught me completely by surprise. But this video, which aims entirely for the wonderful sense of humor that goes with high schoolers, right? Quirky, a little bit irreverent, also does an incredibly fantastic job of trying to piece together who Thomas was and why he might have reacted the way that he did when we meet him in this moment in his faith journey. Now, I could try to describe this video for you, but you know what? I think it has to be seen. And it's short. It's only about 6.5 minutes. And guess what? It's Holy Humor Sunday.
There you go.
So that gives us permission to do something a little bit unusual and fun. So I'm going to invite all of you to join with me. Channel your inner high schooler. Now, for some of us, we have to dig back, and few of you will get to imagine forward. But I don't know, lean back in your chair, kind of slouch. Pretend like you're a little bit too cool for school, but you know what else this gives you permission to? Laugh out loud if you feel like it. You know, like poke your friend when something really resonates with you. And we're going to watch this video, and then we will talk about it a little bit afterwards. All right? This is Thomas, the Zealous Fool. And my masterful tech person here is going to bring it up for us.
Thomas was also called Didymus, an Aramaic word meaning twin. We don't know for sure why Thomas was called twin, as there is no evidence that he had any siblings at all. Perhaps the name twin spoke to something Thomas was seeking. True companionship. One day, while working as a carpenter in his hometown of Galilee, Thomas heard a man named Jesus preaching in the market. Thomas was utterly captivated by the truth and power of his words. Never in all his days had he crossed paths with such a man.
Candles! Get your candles here!
He promptly gave up carpentry and threw himself into serving Jesus.
Okay. You are amazing. Totally awesome. Where are you going next, huh? Can I come along? Huh? Look, I'll just walk behind you. 10 feet. 10 feet? 10 feet good? 5 feet? Can I just walk right next to you? Hey! Oh, okay. Switch.
Watch it!
Thomas joined the rest of the disciples, following Jesus wherever he went.
Sorry, excuse me.
While the other disciples appreciated Thomas' enthusiasm, they sometimes found him a little overbearing.
Hey!
Oh man, this is so cool! You're so cool! What are we gonna do next? Man, this is awesome! This is like...
To be fair to Thomas, Jesus was doing some pretty awesome stuff. In Bethsaida, he took 5 loaves of bread and fed 5,000 hungry souls.
Ooh, that was awesome! You're awesome!
However irritating Thomas might have been, his devotion to Jesus ran deep. Jesus had visited Judea the previous year and was nearly stoned to death by an angry crowd. But when Jesus received word that his friend Lazarus had died in Judea, he was determined to visit his friend's grave, despite the danger.
Hey, where Jesus goes, we go. Where Jesus dies, we die. Come on, guys. Where's your devotion?
Thomas's faith in Jesus was absolute, and no threat of danger could change that.
Okay then.
Awesome!
Can eating avocados make you look younger?
Less confidence can damage your skin, but some can help your skin glow. So let's go grocery shopping.
Asparagus. I love asparagus. It can actually help improve your skin tone and protect your skin from sun damage.
Skip that one.
It's great.
There we go.
You too.
In Judea, Jesus led the disciples to Lazarus' grave and brought his friend back from the dead.
Even though he'd been dead for like 4 days, Jesus was like, Lazarus, come forth. And then there was this flash of light, which was totally awesome. And then Lazarus came out, all wrapped in burial cloth, and he was like, whoa! And we were all like, whoa!
Thomas
It
was,
was just
of course,
awesome.
very impressed. Thomas' faith wasn't truly tested until the crucifixion. Thomas is not specifically mentioned in the arrest of Jesus, but we are told that all the disciples deserted Jesus and fled. Thomas could not believe what had happened. He thought it impossible for Jesus to ever let him down. And yet here he was, alone, abandoned, without any explanation. No one had been more faithful to Jesus, but for the very first time, Thomas began to have doubts. When Thomas heard the news that a risen Jesus had appeared to the other disciples, his response was skeptical, to say the least.
What's up, guys?
He is risen!
Right.
The disciples told Thomas their accounts of seeing the risen Jesus, but the more they tried to convince him, the more stubbornly he doubted.
How great could he be if he just left us to fend for ourselves? Until I see the marks on his hands and place my finger into the wound on his side, I'm not buying it.
Jesus took Thomas at his word, and a week later, he appeared.
Oh! Whoa!
And upon seeing Jesus,
My Lord! My God!
his faith was immediately restored. However, this did not mark the end of Thomas' struggle to maintain faith. When Jesus ascended to heaven 40 days after the resurrection, Thomas again felt lost and confused. How could he possibly carry on without Jesus by his side? Tradition told that after the ascension, Thomas was given the task of spreading the gospel in what is now known as India, which meant he wouldn't have anyone by his side. Despite this, Thomas accepted his assignment.
Blessed are...
Sharing the good news in India proved more difficult than he could have possibly imagined. But Thomas persevered, baptizing hundreds and founding a string of churches that bore his name. Through his ministry, his eyes were opened to a greater faith, a deeper faith, as he witnessed people who had never seen or heard of Jesus, and yet still believed.
Awesome!
Thank you, Steve, our fantastic tech team. That was awesome.
Yes.
So what did you think? Now, awesome. So, I mean, you can see why this made my heart sing. Because Thomas feels like a fully fleshed out person with a journey of faith. And you can see it's not just that one moment. His faith journey goes up and down just like the rest of us. So I'm curious, how many of you have known someone who's had that level of enthusiasm for something?
Yes.
Yep. How many of you have been that person who has that level of enthusiasm for something? I have. I nerd out on things you might be surprised to know. And you can kind of see how the people around you are like, well, that's kind of cool, but also a little bit, I'm not so sure. So I'm curious, have any of you ever known someone or been someone who was this into Jesus when you were a teen or a young adult? Yeah, and you have so much fire. But it's hard sometimes because the fire needs to be sustained by this always resurrection moment, right? But that's not how our faith journeys go. And that's not what Jesus promised us, is it? I mean, Jesus said, if you're going to be my follower, this is not always going to be easy. In fact, you're going to have to carry your cross with me. This could be really hard for you at times. But Thomas is clearly all in. He's clearly all in, isn't he? There's that fantastic moment. And if you were in church 2 or 3 weeks ago, we hit this in our lectionary, the raising of Lazarus, right? And before it, he gets the news, and he thinks, and the disciples think, we're not going anywhere near that, because the last time we got ran out of town. But Jesus is like, no, I'm going. It's Lazarus. We have to go. And it's only Thomas who says, yep, if you're going, Jesus, we'll be there. I'll be there with you. So he's definitely all in. And you can think about it, it's sometimes the rolling eyes, it's like the kid who tries too hard in class, who was like asking all the questions about the math, because they really want to know how this problem works out and how to solve it. No one was like, Jane, you were a math major. That was definitely me in algebra class. I loved that stuff. I think Thomas gives us a gift because we need that kind of enthusiasm to help us in our faith journeys. And we need to understand how that works out so that we can move through cycles of faith and doubt in our own faith lives. Because Thomas's understanding of Jesus grew over time. I mean, you can tell as a follower early on, he thinks Jesus is here to do amazing things for the people around him, including, because he thinks he's the Messiah, possibly leading them into military victory over the Roman occupation. I think that's why when the crucifixion came, it hit him so hard, right? Because he hadn't imagined beyond that little box of what he thought Jesus was there for. And he thought it was impossible that Jesus could ever let him down. He wanted his faith journey to be always awesome all the time. I think we all face moments when our faith is challenged and we feel like God has let us down, don't we? We've all been there. So the real problem in the middle of all that is not doubt. It's where the doubt takes us, right? Because we have to let the doubt be part of our walk with God. Indeed, the online blogger David Roberts suggests that we have to have doubt if we're going to fully experience resurrection and the new life in the body of Christ that is being offered to us. It's part of our journey of transformation. So it's important for Thomas, and it's important for all of us. Without the doubt, could he have gotten to that moment where he get down on his knees and say, "My Lord, my God"? Which in many ways in the gospel is like the peak of what happens. In John's gospel, it starts out way back at the beginning saying, Jesus is God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, right? That's the opening of John's gospel. And then we hear today at the end that the whole gospel was written so that we could see that Jesus was the Son of God, and that he is through whom we find new life in his resurrection. Like, it's written for us, the people who didn't get to meet Jesus while he was walking on earth. And Thomas is like that first example for us, because he's the first one that says, all right, I get it. You are God. Thomas walks a path that models for us a full journey of faith, one that includes both enthusiasm and doubt, and all of the ways that those things intermingle. They go together, faith and doubt. They are not fighting each other. It's not like we have to set doubt on the shelf and only have that enthusiastic faith. It's all part of our walk with God. In fact, doubt is our path to deeper faith. It's our journey towards living into the resurrection and new life that God calls us to. That's a faith that can withstand what's going to come when the signs are discouraging. That's the faith that is the bedrock of what we are being called to in this Easter season. So, when you reach those points, when the signs aren't always what you need to buoy you up in your faith. Let your doubt coexist. Let your doubt fill you so that you can find the hope of the resurrection in the middle of all of that. So that you can trust that God has something new, something better that you might not have ever even imagined coming in your calling, in your walk with God. I mean, do you think Thomas could have imagined that he was called to be a missionary to India? Think Thomas even knew where India was? But that was what God had in store for him. So when you hit those moments in your life, let the doubt and the enthusiasm carry you through, because you know what that is? That's awesome, right? That is the resurrection. That's the new life that God has in store for us. I want to close with a poem. It's called Doubt, and it's by Marion Stravell. I have not answered for you here on this barren slope, mistily there on that mound. Set out your fragile hope. Doubt will water the ground. Doubt, the authentic cry. Rainbow, the earth to the sky.